Actually was able to convince the former head of the president of Groupon to click my slides for me, so that was my real big accomplishment. So who here reads TechCrunch every day? VentureBeat, any of those things? Yeah, you know, it's kind of the shittiest part of the whole tech scene is that like we glorify all of the awesome stuff that's happening, and we spend all this time like looking at the great things out there, and it turns out that like it's like the tip of the iceberg, that stuff. And so if you want to know all of the great stuff that's happened about me and my company, like please go ahead and like Google Zaarly or look on TechCrunch and you'll see all that stuff. But honestly, like that stuff doesn't really matter. It's actually like the easy part of the game is to get press and do all that kind of stuff. The hard part is dealing with all the hard stuff. So essentially, like these are all the words that we hear talked about all the time, like failure, like entrepreneurs are all about fail. We like pivot and we do all this stuff. I fucking hate to fail. Like I hate it. I hate it, but it's part of the game. That's like kind of this whole thing here. And so like the trick in failing actually is to do it in a place that's safe. And so that's actually like the thing that I've found is the most important thing about failure and screwing up. If we go to the next slide. Is actually no entrepreneur is okay with it. Like if you're okay with failure, please go work for the government. Like don't do not be okay with failure. Sorry. Hope there's no one. I'm not saying that anymore. But like it's not, you're not okay with failure. It's part of what we do. But if you go to the next slide, the important part is actually find a group of entrepreneurs that you can trust and celebrate with honestly. So entrepreneurship is not about success and failure. It's not about failing. It's not about iteration, all that stuff. It's actually about finding a place that you can be honest with what's going on. And so, this is like a start of that honest thing here a little bit. So last night it was like at 2 a.m. or something like that. So sorry for sending the slides really late. But I started like listing out like what are some of the dumb things that have happened to me and like my kind of startup career a little bit. So I'm going to share like I actually like kept going and I was like, God, I got a lot of slides here. So we'll go through some of them fast. But these are like things that like I've had happen to me, and some of them I'll give you a personal story. Some of them we can talk about in questions. Some of them you'll have to buy me a beer to hear the real story. But this is life as a startup. Like this is what TechCrunch thinks. Like this is how it works. This is what happens if you look at your Mixpanel. Like does anyone use Mixpanel for like analytics? I got it. So this is an analytics platform. This is like the shit that really happened right here. And God, you hope to get to B. You may wind up quitting somewhere along in here, but this is what happens. And the trick in all of this that I've found is it's actually to find people that you can talk about this part with honestly. And so no matter what, if you get one thing out of this presentation, like please don't be an entrepreneur yourself. Find people that are also entrepreneurs and do this with them. The most important thing I've done in my career is find a group of entrepreneurs that I am totally honest with. They know my numbers, they know the information, they know the shit that's hard, they know that stuff. TechCrunch doesn't know that, maybe. Sometimes they do, but that's the important thing right there. So here's some of the shit that I've done wrong, and probably more importantly, like what things I've learned from it. So we're gonna go through fast. So the first thing is, I remember early in one of my last companies before Zaarly, we pitched this whole thing about we did not want to do services revenue. We were like too good for services revenue because like we're a startup. We don't want to consult. We're too good for that revenue. And I think like that's the don't be too good for revenue. We literally like at Aperture thought that we were too good for revenue. And turned out like when we changed our mind about 3 years later, that company just got acquired for an estimated $100 million. That's because we weren't too good for revenue. So like we thought we were too good for revenue because we thought that's what VCs wanted. Turns out it's your company. Like all revenue is good revenue. So this is something else that I didn't do this myself. Someone at a great presentation, gave me like, how would you capsulate this in a tweet? And so I wrote tweets for you. So if you want to like take this capsulate, this is your tweet for you. So if you want it, there you go. I think this might be even 140 characters. I didn't count, but it's all revenue. Like if you're building a company, you're not building a nonprofit. Some of us might build nonprofits, but you're building a company that's supposed to make money. So at the start of this, like find revenue. Like it's okay. Airbnb had to make fucking cereal boxes. All right, like that's what they started out with. They started out making cereal boxes because that's how they had to pay the bill. So at the start, don't be too good for revenue. We ultimately wasted some time trying to like do scalable revenue. Just get revenue. So the other thing is like really important. Everyone talks about like culture, and there's now this like huge big thing about like culture builds company. It's not like, you know, the great idea and it's the great people. I totally agree with that construct, but don't assume that just because you guys have fun at the office that you've built a great culture. And in this document right here, the employee handbook, is a personal lesson that we learned at Zaarly, is that we grew from, you know, 3 guys working on this as a startup weekend to 50 people in about 9 months. That's fast. Like, I don't know if anyone's hired that fast of a, you know, group of people, but it's hard to like think through that number of people. And we thought, like, the 3 of us, Ian, Bo, and I, we're fun people. People like us, like, we think. But when you get from that, like, you know, 15 people where you can talk to people and kind of share that stuff, culture doesn't scale unless you scale it. And so this is the important thing that we did. We finally, after about a year, put down our culture in the handbook. And so if you want to go to the next slide, this is important. Culture is hard work. We screwed it up. We lost a couple of great people while we were at Zaarly because we thought that us being fun guys and like having this great place that we thought to work would scale. It doesn't scale. Culture is hard work. So almost every startup you have here will start with great culture because you all are great people and you're starting a company. But the great, amazing startups, they get great at keeping their culture. And so figure out how to do that. That was the lesson for us at Zaarly. We put a lot of time into this book. And if you want to check it out, it's handbook.zaarly.com. Really proud of it, and it is something that we learned a lot from, but we did it because we screwed up. We lost some people that we thought were great because we didn't think about scaling culture. So the other one that I think is a great one that we screwed up too is, who here is in a startup right now? Right, all you guys are, someone all? Who here feels like your startup is going like fast and you just need some help, you're looking for more people to help you? Anyone? A few? Okay. No one you hire is a stopgap. Like, everyone feels like things are going fast. Like, we hired 50 people in 9 months. Like, it's fucking crazy. So we started hiring people because we just needed bodies. We needed someone to manage Los Angeles. We needed someone to do New York. No one you hire is a stopgap. Like, and it turns out when you're trying to scale an organization with culture, hiring someone who's just okay or is going to fill a role for a bit till you get someone better, it is hard on the company. And we learned that. We opened a team of 5 people in New York City because we needed people to help manage the marketplace at Zaarly. And, you know, we didn't really do a job search. We kind of checked our network, found some people who were going to be pretty good. They were just going to be a stopgap until we could get someone senior. We just shut the office down because we couldn't wind up, you know, building something around people that weren't, you know, there for the long haul. So essentially, like, no hire is ever a stopgap. Like, it's a lesson I've learned is like, spend the time, find someone awesome. And I think Maria talked about it today. But and this is kind of my test now that I do to any person that I hire, think about taking an 8-hour road trip in a car with that person. If it makes you uncomfortable, please don't hire that person because you're going to spend many 8-hour time periods working with this person when you do a startup. So any person that you hire, whether they're the most junior person who, or you know, the janitor cleaning it, which tends to be the CEO oftentimes, you know, make sure that you would spend that much time with them because you are. So this is another lesson that a lot of startups think here. Who here has kind of a virtual team right now? Start out with? Good luck. And I mean that in like total honesty, like, good luck. I hope it works for you. It's hard. It's not kind of hard, it's fucking hard. Because what you're doing, I have found, is you're actually just delaying the inevitable. You're trying to delay something that's gonna happen. Like, we started out with a company that was, we had to grow super fast. So we hired people in Greenville and in Colorado and in Florida and all that kind of stuff. Turned out all that we were doing was making the tough conversation happen 3, 6, 9 months later. You cannot build culture virtually. You can't. You just can't. I mean, God love companies that are big and can basically scale culture, but you can't build culture, and this is the lesson that we learned. You can't build culture virtually. It's like, turns out, like, the slide about Skype is spot on here. Like, I don't know how many times that I've found that, like, there was a discussion or a debate that happened over IM that someone got pissed off about. Next thing you know, it blows up in this huge thing. If you actually just talk to the person face to face, it always solves those problems. So that's why I think, like, just decisions in a company aren't made virtually. So if you're starting a company right now, yeah, it's true. Like, if you're starting a company right now and you're trying to basically build something together, like, I get it. You can make this a fun thing, but if you're really going to do your startup, you have to make tough decisions. And that might mean moving different people, different places or something like that. But starting virtual to me is literally like trying to kind of create a company, sorta. You're not really doing it. If you really want to do your startup, you have to make the tough choice now, because if you do it virtually, you're just delaying that till later. So this is another one that we screwed up on too. Is like, so what if we need this role? What if we just hired a consultant? Like, who here has kind of like said like, I'll just do my startup. Anyone hired consultants so far? Yeah, it's man. Consultants are great in theory, and they're not great in startup practice. And I would say like one of the things that we did is we realized early on at Zaarly, we thought, and at Aperture, we did it both times actually. This is how dumb I am. We thought that like SEO was going to be an important thing right here, and we thought that kind of like digital marketing was something great, but like it's hard to like find a digital marketer. So let's like just get a consultant to come in and kind of run this stuff for us, right? Turns out that's what you're doing. Is you're saying like, hey, I need a way to watch TV, laying down, and so literally a consultant doesn't really care about things, so they tip the TV over. Like that's essentially what consultants do, is because they're not part of the fabric. So if you go to the next one. So essentially, like, don't outsource core shit. Like, you can do certain little things and all that kind of stuff, but just don't outsource stuff. Who here has like outsourced something to India on Odesk or any of their development yet? No? You have? Okay. How'd it work out? Yeah. Great. Terrible, right? Oh, great for you?
Yeah, it was really basic stuff.
Okay, so basic stuff.
50-50.
Core stuff, you can't outsource it. And I know like people I've heard all the time like, hey, I need like I can't find a technical co-founder, I can't do that stuff. Like, I'm great for proof of concepts. That's not core. That's just a proof of concept. Totally okay with outsourcing that stuff, but like I've heard this so many times. So yeah, we outsourced it to India, to whatever it is, and now we're stuck with this pile of junk. Just don't. I mean, it's like I said, we learned the lesson hard, and I think it's something that anything that's core to the company, make it core to the company or do it yourself. So this is another favorite one of mine. I hear so many. The picture is one part of it, but
Find the picture.
pretty awesome, huh? So rad, isn't it? So rad.
Why did you push over that kid?
I know. So this is like a really great one here today that I hear all the time. Like, yeah, we're a data-driven company. Who thinks their startup is data-driven? Yeah? No? Kind of. You guys can raise your damn hands. I'm just, I'm not going to like make fun of you. I might a little. Okay, yeah. So like everyone thinks they're data driven, and like then I ask, so like what do you do to do? Well, yeah, we check Mixpanel, or we check Google Analytics like once a week to see what it is. You are not data driven, and like we literally, both the companies spend a lot of time like making decisions and debating stuff. We actually just sit down and really plan something out using real data, like really using Excel, which is like something you can manipulate data in, or really using Mixpanel, another tool. Like then you can become data driven, and it makes decisions so much easier. So just data, you idiot. Please use data. This is something I think is really important. Doing a startup, you're looking for your unfair advantage. That's what you're doing. You're looking for a way that you can do something unfair. And when you're a startup, you're essentially able to build your startup from the ground up using data that can help you beat someone else. And so it turns out like it's harder to basically build an experiment with data in mind. But if you do it up front, it turns out much better results. So design your company around this data advantage that you have. Big companies, they're like clusterfucks of data, but you can basically start from the core with data. So do that. It turns out it's much easier to like basically start from the ground up with data than try to what we did, which is spend $30K on a big solution after you've been doing this for a few months. Start at the beginning with data. So this is another one that I think is important that startups often fail at, is like we are madly in like with each other. If your customers madly like you, please don't scale. Like, please don't, let me repeat that again. If your customers are madly in like with you, please don't scale. You as a startup have to be able to convince the first 100 people that they are madly in love with you, not madly in like with you. And so I think that's an important thing that I've learned at Zaarly. And one of the reasons that we basically built a business the first time where we had a bunch of people, like millions of people that madly liked us, and tens of millions of dollars through the system, but we couldn't monetize because people were madly in like with us. We totally changed our model and found out that, hey, we can actually make people madly in love with us. Changes the entire dynamic. So think through before you scale. Like, can you build it so that you have 100 lovers of what you do? God, that's a weird phrase, isn't it? Like 100 lovers. But 100 lovers versus like a million likers. And Brian Chesky from Airbnb talks about this a lot. Like, build something that people love. Don't build something that people like. And so take the time and spend the time to do it. I think that we probably could have shaved 2 to 3 months off of our development, of our cycle, finding what the right thing was by focusing on what did people love about it versus what did people like about it. So focus on the love part, not the like part. So this is like a favorite one of mine that I think all founders do, is like founders, God, we're all fucked up a little bit. It's just true, because we're all so kind of good at everything but not great at anything, so it's really easy to get unfocused. And like, you know, it's like you're talking about something like squirrel, right? Like that's kind of how it is. It's like, we're reading TechCrunch and like, oh my God, our competitors are doing that. And I think, it's like, that's what happens. So like, don't just say you're focused, like really be focused. And it's hard. I'm not saying like I have any magical solution here, but I'll say like it's one of the challenges that I face as a founder personally. It's like, how do you wind up focusing? And so some of the things that I do is like, I literally don't schedule meetings on some days. I take the entire day, and I'll take periods of time where I'll block off schedules now. So I like, find ways to be focused, because I think it's really important. It is like probably one of the core things. Like, your startup is all about doing something awesome, and so if what you're working on is not scaring the shit out of you, then you're working on the wrong thing. Focus on the stuff that scares you, because that's the most important thing for the business. So this is true, right? Like when you're the CEO, it feels like you're smart, right? You're like in charge. It's like you're the boss. You're smart. Damn it, we're idiots. Like, turns out we are. Kevin was saying, customers tell you what really is right versus what you think is right. Like, just because you have a title that says founder on it, it actually means the reverse. Like, invert the scale. When you're the founder, you're actually like the janitor, you're the chief listener, you're not very smart. And I think, like, remember, you're just not. Like, this is all a game about learning a lot. So I like, this is a phrase that I think is important. Like, the best entrepreneurs I've ever met have the curiosity of a child. Like, they just ask a lot of questions because they know they're not very smart. They also have the humility of a priest. They literally sit there and say things like, I don't know. I think like we're just doing the best that we can, that type of stuff. But they also have the impatience of a dying man, because like they know they have to go as fast as possible. So this is like the perfect, like this is like the Jack Dorsey, right? That's like the guy, right? But this is like what you should think about, is like, how do you do these things and know that you're just not great? And that's okay. Like, founders are not inherently great. Just get great by trying to do these things. So the last thing that I would say, my number 10 here is like, I find this is, who here has co-founders? Who has co-founders? All right, so I'm not going to embarrass anyone, but if anyone here tells me they don't have vesting on their stock right now with your co-founders, I literally will slap you. I will. I'll slap you right now. Please, dear God, do not assume that because you like each other and you guys are getting along well as co-founders that things won't go badly. I mean, this obviously was going to go badly here, but if you want to go to the next one, like, just as a founder, remember, vesting is your friend. Remember that, like, getting to know your co-founder and like stuff like that, it's like a marriage. A lot of marriages get divorced. A lot of founder things split. Like, please don't be that team that's like, yeah, we thought things were going to go great, so we just gave each other all the equity, and now we're splitting. We don't know how to deal with it. Like, just don't do that. If you've done it, like, talk to me and I can try to help you. But like, please remember, vesting is your friend, and just have that incredibly awkward conversation. And so this conversation, like, I've had to have a lot of times when I put my lawyer hat on. It's like, people don't want to like be uncomfortable, but if you don't know everything about your co-founder, like, have they ever been to prison? Did they ever, kill someone? Have they like stolen money? Like, you better know all that stuff, because like it's gonna come out and shit's gonna get really bad if you don't. So this is just an important one. So I'll go quickly. So recap here, these are like the things that I think, I'll post this on SlideShare, so if anyone wants to see it, you guys can see it. And then a couple last quick things here. Go to the next one. So the last thing, like, what you get to do as a founder is fun. Like, enjoy life. Like, don't just forget the fact to look out there and see like you've got this incredible life and enjoy like the moon and stuff like that. Like, founding companies is awesome. It's also incredibly difficult. It's the hardest thing. I mean, I've worked in some really high stress job. Being a founder is incredibly scary and very difficult to do. So don't forget to look out and think like how amazing it is. And this picture to me symbolizes like we can just forget that the moon's there. It's kind of out there, but like just remember to embrace it. This, if nothing, what you've done here today is get to meet another group of entrepreneurs who are all pretty early in the game. So please like talk to each other and like don't let this be like a one-time deal. I think probably the best thing, I'm just imagining that like the 4 of you guys got out of this experience of planning it. And so Noah, I'll say, here's the kudos in doing it, is if you use this group to like bounce ideas off of and like build your network of people you can be honest with, awesome. Use that. Like, the best and most important group of people I have right now is a group of 15 other entrepreneurs that I get to ask questions of and talk about. So do that kind of stuff. Yeah, so do it.
All right, guys, let's get some good questions out there.
On the idea of using data as an unfair advantage, since you're starting a new company now, how are you approaching that idea? What kind of data are you utilizing to an unfair advantage?
Yeah, so I would say the first thing is like actually what I'm working in the small business financing world a little bit. That's my newest company. And I actually found that one of the great unfair advantages is look at academic research that's in the academic world. There's some amazing stuff that happens in there that literally no one looks at. And so go out there, find that. Use things like data.gov, which has all this open source data out there. Find things that are like pockets of data that people aren't looking at or seeing. So find that. And the second thing is make sure you're working with a technology team that's actually thinking about how to use that data, capture that data, share it, think about it. I would have hired a data scientist 6 months earlier if I was at Zaarly to do it all over again. So those are the things that I think are important. Find data that's out there already, or analytics or whatever it is. Make sure you have a system that handles it, and then get someone who's good who can work on it.
Maybe a silly question, but how do you tell the difference between the ones that like you and the ones that love you?
I think daily active or weekly active users is the most important thing. So if people come back every day, great. If people come back periodically, they kind of just like you. If they pay you and they pay you well, they pretty much love you. If they basically like only use the freemium part of it and don't use the premium part of it, they probably don't love you. Like you'll know. It's essentially like if you're looking at your numbers and you see a wide gap between the user numbers and that's what you tell your board versus the active user numbers, you know that you have a problem.
2 or 3 best questions to ask co-founders if you're going into a venture and you're ideation. What do you need to know?
Yeah, so great question, by the way. Like, what should you ask your co-founders? I always ask them about their finances. So honestly, like one of the most important things that you should know about is how much money's in your bank account, how long can you go without taking a salary, what's your family situation look like in terms of stuff like that. Finances is like what kills a lot of deals, so ask a bunch around finances. The second one I think is also important is what do you specifically want to do? Like this responsibility question a little bit, like just because Zvi talked about it earlier, right? Like they had the very clearly defined roles, so figure out like what do you like to do? And the third one I always like to ask is like, so tell me about your last 3 jobs and why it didn't work out. Like figure those kind of things out. So is that okay?
Yeah, that's great.
Okay.
You talked about revenue, and focusing on revenue and all the revenue is good revenue. But what if that revenue is a distraction to your ultimate goal? Like for instance, I think the previous speaker talked about the fact that you might have a few customers that are willing to pay you, but they're paying for something that might be just for them compared to the ultimate vision that you have for your company.
You took that revenue though, right, from those initial customers?
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's the answer, right? It's like I get it, but so essentially like it was a stepping stone. So now he has the luxury of making those choices. When at the beginning, like don't get too good for it is my only point. And kudos for then having the opportunity to like learn from it and things like that and make choices. But too many times people get holy about revenue a little bit, and like I only take scalable revenue, or I don't take services revenue, or that kind of stuff. Like at the start, please don't be too good for that stuff. Like you know, just be thoughtful about it. And I don't mean to say like I have an answer, and like, you know, every situation is different. One's different than the other, and you know, it all depends. But just be thoughtful about it. I would say don't draw like firm lines in the stand.
Awesome.
Thank you guys.